Welcome to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And I'm not talking about some fantasy or lottery dream, but a simple coin you might have ignored your entire life. Because today we're diving into the mysterious world of the 1949 wheat penny. A coin so ordinary on the surface yet rumored to have reached jaw-dropping values of up to $70 million under the right conditions. And before you brush this off as just another exaggeration, imagine the shock of someone discovering this exact coin tucked away in an old drawer or passed down in a forgotten collection, because stories like that are exactly what keep collectors awake at night chasing this tiny piece of history, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end because the next coins we'll uncover later are even more unbelievable and might completely change how you look at every coin you own. So now let's step back in time to 1949, just a few years after World War II, when the United States was rebuilding its economy and everyday items, including coins, carried the weight of a nation transitioning into a new era. The wheat penny, officially known as the Lincoln wheat cent, had already been in circulation for decades since its debut in 1909, featuring the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the classic wheat stalks on the reverse, symbolizing prosperity and growth. But what makes the 1949 version stand out is not just its age or design, but the subtle, almost invisible variations and errors that occurred during its minting process, because back then, coin production wasn't as technologically precise as it is today, meaning small mistakes could slip through unnoticed, and those mistakes are exactly what can transform a 1-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure. Now here's where things get really interesting. Certain 1949 wheat pennies were struck with die errors, including double dies where the design appears slightly duplicated, off-center strikes that shift the entire image, and even rare cases of planchet errors where the metal blank itself was flawed before striking. And while many of these errors might seem minor to the untrained, collectors see them as fingerprints of history, unique signatures that can never be replicated. And that's why some of these coins have been valued at astronomical levels, especially when found in near-perfect condition with original mint luster intact. Imagine holding a coin that has survived over 70 years without significant wear, its surfaces still gleaming as if it just left the mint. That level of preservation alone can send collectors into a frenzy. And when you combine that with a rare mint mark such as the elusive 1949s or certain high-grade Philadelphia strikes, the value can skyrocket beyond anything most people would ever expect from a penny. Now picture this scenario: someone inherits a box of old coins from a grandparent, they casually sift through them without much thought, and there it is, a 1949 wheat penny sitting quietly among hundreds of others, completely overlooked. And that's the reality for many people, because these coins were produced in the millions, making them seem common at first glance. But the truth is only a tiny fraction carry the specific traits that collectors are willing to pay fortunes for. And this is where attention to detail becomes everything. You have to look closely at the date, the mint mark just below it, the sharpness of Lincoln's profile, and even the tiniest anomalies in the lettering, because sometimes the difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-changing discovery comes down to a barely noticeable detail. And if you're thinking this sounds like a treasure hunt, you're absolutely right, because coin collecting at this level isn't just a hobby, it's a pursuit driven by history, curiosity, and the thrill of uncovering something extraordinary hidden in plain sight. And speaking of hidden treasures, don't go anywhere, because the next coin we'll talk about later has its own shocking story that collectors can't stop talking about. But before we get there, let's dig deeper into why the 1949 wheat penny has captured so much attention over the years. Auction records and private sales have revealed that high-grade examples, especially those graded by professional services at the top of the scale, can command staggering prices, and while not every 1949 penny will make you rich, the possibility that one might is enough to keep people searching through rolls, jars, and old collections, because the dream is always alive that the next coin you examine could be the one, and that's exactly what makes this so addictive, the idea that history, luck, and knowledge can come together in a single moment to create something unforgettable. Now let's talk about condition, because this is where things separate ordinary coins from legendary ones. Coins that have been heavily circulated often show wear, scratches, and dull surfaces, but those that have been preserved carefully, perhaps stored away for decades without being touched, can retain their original brilliance, and in the world of numismatics, that brilliance is everything. It tells a story of preservation, of a coin that somehow escaped the wear and tear of daily life, and collectors are willing to pay a premium for that story, especially when it's paired with rarity. And here's another twist that adds to the intrigue. Some 1949 wheat pennies are believed to have been struck using slightly misaligned dies, creating subtle variations in the design that only experts can identify. These variations might seem insignificant at first, but in the collector's market they can mean the difference between a coin worth a few dollars and one worth a fortune, and that's why knowledge is power in this world. The more you understand about these coins, the better your chances of spotting something valuable, and as you're listening to this, you might be thinking about the coins you already have. Maybe there's a jar sitting somewhere in your house filled with old pennies. Maybe you've never taken the time to look through them carefully, but what if one of them is a 1949 wheat penny with a rare error or in exceptional condition? That possibility alone should make you want to check right now, because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. And that's exactly how these treasures continue to circulate unnoticed, waiting for someone with a keen eye to discover them. And trust me, you don't want to be the person who lets a potential fortune slip through your fingers. Now, before we wrap up this incredible journey into the world of the 1949 wheat penny, let me remind you again that this is just the beginning, because the next coins we're going to explore later have stories that are even more shocking, filled with unexpected twists and values that might leave you speechless. So make sure you stay with me, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. And as we close this chapter on the 1949 wheat penny, remember, this isn't just about money, it's about history, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. The idea that something so small and seemingly insignificant can hold such immense value is what makes coin collecting truly fascinating. And if you thought this coin was unbelievable, just wait until you see what comes next. Next, 1950 wheat penny USA coins. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, not because it shines brighter than the rest but because it carries a hidden story that only a few truly understand. And today we're stepping into the world of the 1950 wheat penny, a coin that most people would overlook without a second thought, yet under the right circumstances has been whispered about in collector circles for reaching astonishing heights close to $80 million. And before you think that sounds impossible, remember that some of the most valuable coins in history started out exactly like this, small, ordinary, and easily ignored. So stick with me, because what you're about to learn could completely change the way you look at every single penny you come across, and by the end of this you might even feel the urge to start checking your own collection immediately. Now let's rewind to 1950, a time when the United States was entering a new decade filled with optimism, industrial growth, and rapid change, and coins like the wheat penny were part of everyday life, passing through countless hands without anyone imagining that decades later they would become objects of obsession for collectors around the world. the design remained the same iconic look introduced in 1909 with Abraham Lincoln on the front and the wheat ears framing the reverse. But what makes the 1950 version so fascinating isn't the design itself, it's the hidden variations and minting quirks that occurred during its production, because just like earlier years, the minting process wasn't perfect, and those imperfections are exactly what can turn a simple coin into a legendary find. One of the most talked about aspects of the 1950 wheat penny is the possibility of rare die errors, including double dies where the lettering or date appears slightly duplicated, giving the coin a ghost-like shadow effect that only becomes visible under close inspection. And then there are off-center strikes where the design is shifted away from the center, creating a dramatic and instantly recognizable error that collectors absolutely love. But it doesn't stop there, because some coins from this year are believed to have been struck on improperly prepared planchets, resulting in unusual textures, thickness variations, or even subtle color differences that set them apart from standard issues. And these are the kinds of details that can send collectors into a frenzy, because they represent one-of-a-kind pieces that can never be reproduced. Now imagine someone casually spending one of these coins at a store decades ago, completely unaware of its potential value. That's the kind of story that fuels the excitement around coins like the 1950 wheat penny, because even today there's a chance that one could still be hiding in circulation or sitting unnoticed in a collection somewhere, waiting for the right person to recognize its significance. And this is where things get really intense, because condition plays a massive role in determining value. Coins that have been heavily circulated often lose their sharp details and original luster, but those that have been preserved in near-perfect condition, especially those graded at the highest levels by professional services, can command extraordinary attention and prices. And when you combine that level of preservation with a rare error or a less common mint mark like the 1950D or 1950S in exceptional condition, you start to see how the value can climb into unimaginable territory. Collectors aren't just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history frozen in time, a snapshot of an era that can never be recreated, and that emotional connection is what drives the market to such extremes. Now think about this for a moment. How many pennies have passed through your hands over the years? How many times have you ignored them, tossed them into a jar, or spent them without a second thought? Because the reality is that most people never look closely enough to notice the details that matter, and that's exactly why these hidden treasures continue to exist, because they blend in perfectly with ordinary coins, making them almost invisible to anyone who isn't paying attention. And that's your advantage, because now you know what to look for. You know that a simple coin like the 1950 wheat penny could hold secrets that make it incredibly valuable, and that knowledge alone puts you ahead of the vast majority of people. But don't get too comfortable just yet, because there's always more to uncover in this world. Auction stories and private sales have revealed that certain high-grade 1950 wheat pennies have sparked intense bidding wars, with collectors competing fiercely to secure a piece that stands out from the rest. And while not every coin will reach those extreme values, the possibility that one might is enough to keep the hunt alive, and that's what makes this so addictive: the thrill of the search, the anticipation of discovery, and the idea that at any moment you could stumble upon something extraordinary. And as you're thinking about that, let me remind you again that this journey doesn't end here, because the coins we've talked about so far are just the beginning. There are even more unbelievable stories waiting to be revealed, coins that push the boundaries of what most people think is possible. So make sure you stay locked in, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. And as we bring this deep dive into the 1950 wheat penny to a close, take a moment to appreciate just how much history and potential can be packed into something so small. this isn't just about a coin. It's about the idea that hidden value can exist in the most unexpected places. And if you thought the last coin was impressive, this one takes things to another level, but the real question is what comes after this, because the next discovery might be even more shocking than anything we've covered so far, and trust me, you'll want to be there when we uncover it.